Name your price.
Why would a billionaire place everyone else abandoned? My mother abandoned me. They abandoned. Your high was built on lies.
I already lost my son once.
She was 19, homeless, and down to her last $12 when she bought a rusted hut no one wanted. People laughed as she signed the paper. Some said she wouldn't last a night out there. But within an hour, a black SUV pulled up, and a man representing a billionaire offered her more money than she had ever seen to walk away. He didn't care about the land. He didn't even look at the hut. He only asked one question. Where did you get this property? And when she told him it came from her mother, his face changed. Because the land she had just bought for $10 wasn't worthless. It was something someone powerful had been trying to erase for years. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's story. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more emotional, dramatic, and surprising stories ahead. Be sure to leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. It started on a cold morning when everything she had fit into a single backpack. Elara Quinn stood outside the gray brick building she had called home for the past 4 years, and watched the door close behind her. It didn't slam. It didn't echo. It just clicked shut, soft and final. She didn't turn around. There wasn't much to look back at anyway. A shared room, rotating caseworkers, rules that changed depending on who was in charge, and that quiet understanding that once you turned 19 you were done. No family, no safety net, just out. The air felt colder than it should have. Wyoming always did that this time of year. Early spring, but still sharp enough to bite through thin fabric. Elara pulled her jacket tighter and adjusted the straps on her backpack. Inside were a few clothes, a worn notebook, and a small envelope she hadn't opened yet. She had gotten it 3 days earlier. No return address. Just her name. At first she thought it was another piece of paperwork. Something from the system. Maybe a final notice. Maybe something she had to sign. But when she turned it over, she saw a name she hadn't seen in years. Quinn. Her mother's last name. Elara hadn't said that name out loud in a long time. Not because she forgot it, but because nobody ever used it. In files she was just another case number. Another kid moved from one place to another. She opened the envelope right there on the sidewalk. Inside was a single sheet of paper, legal language, official seal, and a line that made her read it twice just to be sure she understood. To claim the property, the outstanding tax amount is $10. $10. She stood there for a long time, holding that paper while people walked past her like she didn't exist. Land didn't cost $10. Not anywhere. Not even in the middle of nowhere. Which meant one of two things. Either it was a mistake, or nobody else wanted it. She folded the paper carefully and put it back into the envelope. For the first time that morning, something inside her shifted. It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was direction. And when you had nothing, direction mattered. 2 days later she was on a bus heading north. The ride took hours. The city disappeared first, then the suburbs. Then even the small towns grew thinner, farther apart. By the time the bus turned onto a narrow highway cutting through open land, it felt like she was heading somewhere. People didn't go unless they had a reason. Elara sat by the window the entire time. The envelope rested in her lap, her fingers tracing the edges like she was trying to memorize it. She didn't talk to anyone. No one talked to her. That part felt normal. The town was smaller than she expected. One main street, a gas station, a diner with a flickering sign, a hardware store that looked like it hadn't changed in decades. And at the far end, a low brick building with a faded plaque that read County Records Office. Inside the air smelled like paper and dust. A woman at the front desk looked up as Elara stepped in. Her eyes flicked over the backpack, the worn shoes, the uncertainty in her posture. Not judgment exactly, just recognition. "Can I help you?" she asked. Elara slid the envelope across the counter. "I think this is mine," she said. The woman opened it, scanned the page, then glanced back at her. Something changed in her expression. Not surprise, something quieter. "You're here to claim the Quinn property?" she asked. Elara nodded. The woman hesitated for a second, then she stood. "Wait here." A few minutes later an older man came out from the back office, gray hair, thin glasses. The kind of person who had spent most of his life reading things that mattered to other people. He introduced himself as Mr. Halverson. He didn't smile. "You understand what this is?" he asked, holding up the paper. Elara nodded again, though she wasn't sure she did. It says I can claim it, she said. For $10. He studied her for a long moment. Most people don't come for properties like this, he said quietly. Why not? He didn't answer right away. Instead he gestured toward a chair. Sit, Elara sat. He opened a folder and spread a few documents across the desk. Your mother owned a small piece of land just outside town, he explained. No utilities, no registered structures. It hasn't been maintained in years. He paused. The taxes were never paid after she left. Elara swallowed. Left? Mr. Halverson adjusted glasses. That's what the record says. The words sat there between them, flat, final. Elara didn't argue, she didn't ask questions. She had learned a long time ago that records didn't change just because they were wrong. So she said instead, I can still take it? He looked at her again, this time longer. Legally, he said yes. He slid a form toward her, and the amount due is $10. Elara reached into her pocket and pulled out her money, crumpled bills. Everything she had left. She counted out 10 slowly and placed them on the desk. Her hand shook just a little. Not because of the money, because of what it meant. Mr. Halverson didn't touch the bills right away. Are you sure? He asked. It's all I've got, she said. Something softened in his face. He nodded once. Then let's make it official. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Elara signed her name. And just like that she owned something. Not a room. Not a temporary bed. Land. When she stepped back outside, the sky had gone a deeper shade of gray. The town looked the same, quiet, unbothered. Nothing had changed, except everything had. She hadn't even seen the property yet. She didn't know what was waiting out there. But for the first time in years, she wasn't just moving because she had to. She was moving toward something. She had just taken a few steps down the sidewalk when she heard it. The low hum of an engine. Not the kind of car people in this town drove. Elara turned. A black SUV had pulled up to the curb. Clan, out of place? The door opened. A man stepped out in a tailored coat, phone still in his hand, eyes already locked on her like he knew exactly who she was. He walked straight toward her. Miss Quinn, he said. Elara didn't answer right away. Yes? He gave a polite nod. Controlled. Professional. My name is Carter. I represent Whitestone Holdings. The name didn't mean anything to her. But the way he said it, it sounded like it should. I'd like to speak with you about the property you just acquired, he continued. Elara tightened her grip on her backpack. I just got it, she said. I'm aware. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My client is prepared to make you an offer. How much? He didn't hesitate. Enough to change your life. Heavy, tempting, unreal. Elara felt something shift inside her again. Not hope, not fear, something else. Why? She asked. That was when the man paused. Just for a second, and in that second something slipped. He glanced at the envelope still in her hand, then back at her. Where did you get that property? He asked. Elara frowned. It was my mother's. The change was immediate, subtle, but there. The man's posture stiffened, his expression tightened just slightly. What was her name? He asked. Elara hesitated. Then she said it. Lena Quinn. The man didn't speak for a moment, then he nodded once. Slow, careful. I'll need to report that, he said. He stepped back, already pulling out his phone. Elara watched him. Something cold settling in her chest. She had thought she bought a piece of forgotten land. Something no one cared about. But the way this man looked at her now, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about the hut. It was about her. And as the SUV pulled away, Elara stood there on the empty street, holding a property she didn't understand. Because somewhere, somehow a billionaire already knew she existed. And he wanted what she had. The road to the property wasn't really a road. It started as a gravel path behind the last building in town, then slowly faded into 2 uneven tracks cutting through dry grass and scattered brush. By the time Elara had walked half a mile, even those tracks disappeared. All that was left was open land and the quiet kind of silence that made every step sound louder than it should. She checked the map Mr. Halverson had sketched for her. A turn near a broken fence post. Then straight toward a line of low hills. Another mile, she muttered under her breath. Her backpack felt heavier now, not because anything had changed inside it, but because of what had happened back in town. The SUV, the man, the offer, enough to change your life. She had replayed those words the entire walk. It didn't make sense. No one paid that kind of money for land no one wanted. No utilities, no road access, no buildings worth saving. Unless it wasn't about what was there now. Unless it was about something else. The wind picked up as she climbed a small rise, pushing against her like it was trying to slow her down. When she reached the top, she stopped. There it was, the hut. For a second she thought she had come to the wrong place. It looked worse than anything she had imagined. A long, curved structure made of rusted metal sat crooked in the middle of a clearing, like it had been dropped there and forgotten. The surface was eaten through with orange stains. Parts of the roof sagged. A few broken windows stared out like empty eyes. Weeds had grown up around it, thick and stubborn, almost swallowing the base of the structure. "This is it?" she whispered. She walked closer, boots crunching over dry ground. The air smelled faintly of old metal and something damp, like the place had been closed off for too long. At the front, two heavy doors were chained together with a rusted lock. Ilara stood there for a moment, just looking at it. This was what she had spent $10 on. This was what a billionaire wanted. She let out a slow breath. "Well," she said quietly, "guess this is mine now." She circled the building first, cautious, taking in every detail. There were no fresh tire tracks, no signs of recent activity. Just old debris scattered around the edges, and a few broken boards leaning against the side. But something didn't sit right. The place looked abandoned, too abandoned, like it had been left alone on purpose. She came back to the front and pulled on the chain. It didn't budge. The lock was thick, older than anything she owned, but still solid. Mr. Halverson hadn't given her a key. She frowned. "That's helpful." She stepped back and looked around again, scanning the ground this time. A few feet from the door, half hidden under weeds, she spotted something. A rock, not unusual. Except it was sitting on top of something that didn't match the dirt around it. Ilara crouched and pushed the weeds aside. Beneath the rock was a small metal box, dull and scratched but intact. Her pulse picked up. Slowly she lifted it. It wasn't locked. Inside, wrapped in a piece of cloth, was a key. Old, heavy, iron. She stared at it for a second. "Okay," she whispered, "that's not normal. Who leaves a key hidden like that? And more importantly, who expected someone to find it?" She stood and walked back to the doors. The lock resisted at first. The metal groaned when she pushed the key in. For a second, she thought it wouldn't turn. Then, a sharp click. The sound echoed across the clearing. Ilara froze, waiting, listening, nothing. Just the wind moving through the dry grass. She exhaled slowly and pulled the chain free. It dropped with a hollow clang against the metal doors. Her hands tightened around the handle. "Here we go," she said under her breath. The door didn't open easily. It dragged against the ground, protesting after years of being shut. The hinges let out a long, painful creak as the gap widened. Cold air rushed out from inside. Stale. Heavy. Ilara stepped back instinctively, then forced herself forward. The inside was darker than she expected. Light slipped in through cracks in the roof, thin beams cutting through dust-filled air. The space was large, much larger than the outside suggested. The curved ceiling stretched overhead like an empty shell. No furniture, no tools, no sign anyone had lived there in a long time. Just space, and silence. Her footsteps echoed as she walked in. Each step sounded too loud. Too alone. She moved slowly, scanning everything. The floor was concrete, cracked in places but mostly intact. Along the walls, rust had eaten through parts of the metal, leaving thin gaps where winds slipped through. This wasn't a house. Not yet. It was a shell. Something you could turn into a house, if you had time. If you had money. Ilara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "So this is what they want," she murmured. It didn't add up. She walked farther inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The deeper she went, the more the silence pressed in around her. No birds, no distant cars. Just the soft echo of her own movement. She stopped near the center of the space. For a moment she just stood there. Then she turned slowly, taking it all in again. And that's when she noticed it. Something small. Near the far wall. At first it looked like nothing. Just another piece of debris. But the longer she stared at it, the more it stood out. It was cleaner, less covered in dust. Ilara stepped closer. It was a wooden chair, simple, old, but not broken. She frowned. That didn't make sense. Everything else in the hut had been left to rot. But this looked like someone had placed it there. Recently. Her stomach tightened. She turned slowly, scanning the rest of the space again. Still nothing, no movement, no sound. But that feeling, it was back. The same one she had outside. That this place wasn't just abandoned. It had been left. She took another step toward the chair, then stopped. On the ground beside it, faint but visible in the thin layer of dust, footprints. Not hers. Too large. Ilara's breath caught. Someone had been here. Recently, maybe even today. She didn't move. Just listened. The wind outside shifted. And for a brief second she thought she heard something. Not inside. A faint crunch, like a step. Ilara's heart started to pound. She backed away slowly, eyes fixed on the open doorway. The light outside had changed. Darker now, shadows stretching longer across the clearing. She took another step back, then another. Every instinct in her body told her the same thing. She wasn't alone, and whoever had been here before her might not be gone. Then from somewhere just beyond the door a voice, calm. Lo, you shouldn't be here. Elara froze. Elara didn't turn right away. Her body froze where it stood, halfway between stepping forward and running back. The voice had come from just outside the door, close enough that whoever it was could see her. Close enough that they had been watching. You shouldn't be here. The words weren't loud, not threatening, but there was something in the tone that made her chest tighten. Not anger. Certainty. Slowly she turned. A man stood just beyond the doorway, one hand resting lightly against the metal frame as if he had been there for a while. He wasn't dressed like someone from town. His coat was clean, fitted, dark. Expensive in a way that didn't need to be obvious. He looked at her the way people looked at something they already understood. You found the key, he said. Elara swallowed, forcing her voice steady. It was on the ground. It was placed there. That made her pause. By who? The man didn't answer right away. His eyes moved past her, briefly scanning the inside of the hut. When they came back to her, there was a flicker of something there. Recognition maybe, or calculation. You're Elara Quinn, he said. It wasn't a question, she felt it again. That same cold shift from earlier. How do you know that? She asked. Because I was told to expect you. The words landed heavier than they should have. Told by who? He stepped inside, slow, controlled. Like the space already belonged to him. My name is Harrison Cole, he said, and this property has been under my company's attention for a long time. Elara didn't move. Harrison Cole. The name hit differently when it came from the man himself. Not just a representative. Not someone making an offer. This was him, the billionaire. Standing in the middle of a rusted hut. Looking at her like she was part of something bigger than she understood. You sent that man, she said. The one in town. I did, and now you're here. Yes, why? Harrison didn't answer immediately. Instead he took a few steps further inside, his shoes barely making a sound against the concrete. His gaze moved again across the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Like he was checking something. Making sure it hadn't changed. I wanted to see it myself, he said finally. It? Elara repeated, this place. She let out a quiet breath. It's not much to look at. That depends on what you're looking for. The way he said it made her stomach tighten again. Elara crossed her arms, more out of instinct than confidence. You offered to buy it, she said. Why? Harrison turned his attention back to her. Because it simplifies things. What things? A development project, he said. My company is planning to invest in this area, revitalize it, bring jobs, infrastructure. Elara almost laughed. Out here, she said, gesturing toward the empty land beyond the doorway. There's nothing here, that's exactly why. He stepped closer. The land is cheap, underused, strategically located. The explanation sounded clean, polished, like something he had said before. But something about it didn't sit right. You don't need this exact piece of land for that, she said. His eyes narrowed slightly. No, he admitted. But it would make the process easier. How? He didn't answer. Elara felt her pulse quicken. You're not telling me something, she said. I'm telling you enough. That's not the same thing. A faint smile touched his lips. Not warm, not friendly, just controlled. You're perceptive, he said. That's good. It means you'll understand what I'm about to offer. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. Clean, prepared. Sell me the property, he said, and you walk away with enough money to start over. Anywhere you want. He held it out. Elara didn't take it. How much? She asked. More than you've ever had, he said. Enough that you don't have to sleep in places like this. The words were soft, but they landed hard. Because they were true. For a brief second she pictured it. A real bed, a door that locked. Food she didn't have to think twice about buying, safety. The kind she had never really had. But then, she looked around the hut again. The rusted walls, the cracked floor, the hidden key, the footprints that weren't hers. And the man standing in front of her who knew her name before she ever spoke. This isn't about the land, she said quietly. Harrison's expression didn't change. No, she said, firmer now. You don't care about what's here, you care about something else. Silence stretched between them. Then slowly, Harrison tilted his head. What makes you think that? Because you came here yourself, she said. People like you don't do that unless it matters. For the first time something real flickered in his eyes. Not annoyance, respect. Fair, he said. He lowered the document slightly. But you're wrong about one thing. What? I do care about what's here. Elara held his gaze. Then tell me what it is. He didn't answer. Instead his eyes dropped. To her neck. Elara felt it before she understood it. That shift again. Stronger this time. Harrison's focus had locked onto something specific. She followed his gaze. Her hand instinctively rose to the chain resting against her skin. The small pendant hanging from it was simple worn. Something she had had for as long as she could remember. She had never taken it off. "Where did you get that?" Harrison asked. His voice was different now. Not controlled, not polished. Sharp. Ilara's fingers tightened around the pendant. "I've always had it," she said. "That's not what I asked. It's what I know." He stepped closer, too close. "Who gave it to you?" he pressed. "I don't know," she said, her voice steady despite the tension rising in her chest. "It was with me when I was a kid." Harrison's jaw tightened. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he exhaled slowly, like he was forcing himself back into control. "You should sell the property," he said again, but this time the words felt different. Not like an offer. More like a warning. "Why?" Ilara asked. "Because some things are better left alone." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're going to get." She shook her head. "No." The word came out before she could second guess it. Harrison looked at her, studying her in a way that made it feel like he was measuring something she didn't understand. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Maybe," she replied, "but it's mine to make." Silence again. Then slowly he nodded. "Very well." He stepped back, turning toward the door. But just before he reached it, he stopped. And without looking at her, he said quietly, "Your mother made a mistake coming back here." The words hit like something physical. Ilara's breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked. He didn't turn around. "She should have stayed away," he said. "Why?" Still no answer. He stepped outside. The light shifted again, casting long shadows across the floor. Ilara moved forward quickly. "Wait," she called out. "What happened to her?" Harrison paused at the edge of the clearing. For a moment it looked like he might actually say something. But then he shook his head. "Sell the land," he said. "Walk away," and then he left. Just like that. The sound of his footsteps faded into the wind. Ilara stood in the doorway, her heart still racing, the pendant cold in her hand. "Your mother made a mistake coming back here." The words echoed in her head, over and over. She turned back into the hut slowly. The space felt different now, heavier. Like it was holding something, waiting. Her eyes moved again to the chair, then to the floor, to the places she hadn't looked yet. He hadn't come here for nothing. He hadn't reacted like that for no reason. And whatever it was still here, hidden, somewhere inside this place. Ilara stepped further in, her breathing steady now, her fear shifting into something else. Determination. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't running from the past. She was walking straight into it. And this time, she wasn't going to look away. Ilara didn't move for a long time after Harrison left. The wind slipped through the cracks in the metal walls, low and steady, like the place was breathing around her. His words stayed in her head, looping in a way that made it hard to think straight. "Your mother made a mistake coming back here. Not left, not disappeared. Came back." That meant something. It meant her mother had returned to this place on purpose. Ilara turned slowly, her eyes scanning the hut again, this time with a different focus. Not as someone looking for shelter. Not even as someone trying to understand what she had bought. Now she was looking for what had been hidden. Because it was clear now. Harrison hadn't come here to buy land. He had come here to check if something was still here. And whatever it was, he hadn't found it. Her gaze dropped to the floor. Concrete, cracked in places, uneven old. But something about it didn't match the rest of the structure. She walked toward the center again, slower this time, her boots echoing lightly with each step. The chair was still there. The footprints still faint but visible. Someone had been here recently. Looking, just like she was now. Ilara crouched, running her fingers along the surface of the floor. Dust clung to her skin, cold seeped through her palm. She moved slowly inch by inch, feeling for anything different. A ridge. Barely noticeable. She paused, looked closer there. A thin line running across the concrete. Too straight, too clean compared to the natural cracks around it. Her heartbeat picked up. "This isn't right," she whispered. She stood and looked around for something to use. A broken metal rod leaned against the wall nearby. Rusted but solid enough. Ilara picked it up and brought it back to the spot. She hesitated for a second. Then she pressed the end of the rod into the edge of the line and pushed. Nothing. She tried again, harder this time. The metal scraped against the surface with a sharp, grating sound that echoed through the empty space. Still nothing. Ilara clenched her jaw and shifted her grip. "Come on." She drove the rod down with more force. A crack, small. Her breath caught. She hit it again and again. The surface gave slightly this time, a dull thud replacing the solid resistance from before. Not hollow exactly. But not solid either. Different. Ilara dropped to her knees and brushed the dust away with her hands. The line became clearer now. A rectangular shape. Not part of the original floor. Something placed there later. Sealed. Her pulse was loud in her ears now. She pushed the rod deeper into the edge and pulled upward. For a moment nothing happened. Then, a shift. The slab lifted just enough to break the seal. Cold air rushed out from beneath it. Stale, older than the rest of the hut. Elara froze. Listening, waiting, nothing moved. No sound except her own breathing. Slowly she slid her fingers under the edge and lifted. The slab was heavier than she expected. But it gave way inch by inch until she could tilt it enough to reveal what was underneath. A compartment, hidden beneath the floor. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the slab aside. Inside, protected by a thick plastic covering, was a metal box, clean, untouched by rust, untouched by time. Elara stared at it for a second, her mind trying to catch up with what she was seeing. This was it. This was what Harrison had been looking for. She reached in carefully and pulled the box out. It was heavier than it looked, solid in a way that felt deliberate. Like whoever had placed it there wanted it to last. The lid wasn't locked, that surprised her. Everything else about this place had been sealed, hidden, protected. But this, almost like it had been left for someone specific. Her fingers hesitated over the edge. "Okay," she whispered, then she opened it. Inside, neatly arranged, were several items, papers, a thick envelope, a small external hard drive, and a photograph. Elara picked up the photo first. It showed a younger woman standing in front of this very hut. The metal walls behind her still knew enough to reflect light. She was smiling, but not in a casual way. It was the kind of smile people forced when they were trying to hold on to something slipping away. Elara's chest tightened. She recognized her immediately. Her mother. But she looked different. Stronger, alive in a way Elara had never seen in any of the faded memories she carried. Next to her stood a man. Tall, well-dressed. One arm resting lightly behind her. Not quite touching, but close enough to suggest something more. He wasn't looking at the camera, he was looking at her mother. And there was something in that look that didn't match the story Elara had been told growing up. This wasn't a man who had abandoned someone. This was a man who had been part of something real. Elara turned the photo over. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "Before everything changed." Her throat tightened. She set the photo down slowly and reached for the envelope. Inside were documents, legal papers, copies of records. Her eyes moved quickly across the pages, trying to make sense of the names, the dates, the signatures. One name kept appearing. Cole. She froze. The same name. Harrison Cole. Her hand stilled. No, she flipped through the pages faster now, scanning, searching, and then she saw it. A birth record, not hers, someone else's. Her breath caught. The father's name was listed clearly. Daniel Cole. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Cole. The same last name, the same family. Elara's grip tightened on the paper. This wasn't a coincidence. She looked back at the photograph. At the man standing beside her mother. Her heart started to pound harder. Daniel, the name felt strange in her mouth, unfamiliar, and yet something about it felt close. She set the papers down and picked up the hard drive. It was old, scuffed at the edges. There was no label, no explanation, just silence. Elara stared at it for a long moment. Then she let out a slow breath. "Of course," she murmured. Nothing about this was going to be simple. She placed everything back into the box except the photo. That, she held onto, her fingers tracing edges like she was trying to pull something out of it. Her mother had been here, not just once, not just passing through. She had hidden this, protected it. For years. Not for herself, for someone else. For the person who would eventually come looking. Elara swallowed hard. "For me," she whispered. The realization hit deeper than anything else so far. This wasn't random, this wasn't luck, this had been planned. Her mother had known. Known that one day Elara would stand in this exact place, open this exact box, and finally see what had been taken from her. Elara closed her eyes for a second. Not to block it out, but to hold on to it, the weight of it, the truth beginning to surface. When she opened them again, something inside her had shifted. Fear was still there. Confusion too. But underneath it, something stronger, purpose. She looked around the hut again, but now it felt different. Not empty, not abandoned, but filled with something that had been waiting. And for the first time in her life, Elara didn't feel like someone who had been left behind. She felt like someone who had been brought here. For a reason. She stood slowly, the photo still in her hand. And that's when she noticed something she hadn't seen before, near the entrance. On the inside of the door, a mark. Small, etched into the metal. Ran her fingers over it. It wasn't random. It was sharp lines. Deliberate. And beneath it, a single word. Cole. Elara's breath caught. Because suddenly, this place wasn't just connected to her mother. It belonged to them. And that meant, whatever had been hidden here, was never meant to stay buried forever. Elara didn't sleep that night. She sat with her back against the cold metal wall, the box beside her, the photograph still in her hand. Every time she closed her eyes, the same things came back. The name, the face, the word carved into the door, Cole. It echoed louder in her head the longer she sat there. She had spent most of her life feeling like she came from nowhere. No real past, no real story. Just pieces of records and answers that never went anywhere. Now suddenly there was too much. Too many connections, too many things that didn't line up. And one question that refused to go away. Why would her mother hide all this, instead of telling her? The sky outside slowly shifted from dark to gray. Thin light crept through the cracks in the roof, cutting across the floor and landing right on the open box. Dust moved in the air like something alive. Elara stared at the hard drive. She had no way to open it here, no laptop, no power, just questions. She let out a slow breath and closed the box carefully, wrapping everything back inside except the photograph. That she slid into her jacket pocket, close enough that she could feel it every time she moved. She stood, her body stiff from the cold and the long night. She needed answers. And right now, there was only one place in town that might have them. The diner. The walk back felt shorter this time. Maybe because her mind was louder than the silence around her. Every step pulled her deeper into something she didn't fully understand, but couldn't ignore anymore. When she pushed the door open, the bell above it rang sharp and clear. A few people looked up, then looked away. That part didn't surprise her. What did surprise her was the way one woman didn't look away. She stood behind the counter, mid-50s maybe, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. Her eyes locked onto Elara with a focus that felt personal. Like she had been waiting. "You're the girl," the woman said, not a question. Elara stepped in slowly. "Which girl?" "The one who bought that place out by the old mine." There it was again. Everyone knew. Elara nodded once. "That's me." The woman studied her for a long moment. Then she grabbed a mug, filled it with coffee and set it down at the counter. "Sit," she said. Elara hesitated. "I don't have money. It's not about money." The words came out firm but not unkind. After a second Elara walked over and sat. The warmth of the mug seeped into her hands, grounding her in a way she hadn't realized she needed. The woman leaned against the counter across from her. "What's your name?" she asked. "Elara." The woman nodded slowly. "I'm Martha." The name clicked. Elara remembered it from the day before. The one Mr. Halverson had mentioned in passing. "You knew my mother," Elara said. Martha didn't deny it. "I knew her," she said quietly. Elara's grip tightened slightly on the mug. "What happened to her?" The question came out faster than she expected. Martha didn't answer right away. She looked down at the counter, wiping a spot that didn't need wiping. "Depends on who you ask," she said finally. "I'm asking you." Martha let out a small breath. "They said she left," she said. "Packed up and disappeared." "That's not what happened." "No," Martha agreed softly. "It's not." Silence stretched between them. Elara felt it building again. That pressure. That need to understand something that had been kept from her for too long. "She didn't leave, did she?" Elara said. Martha looked up. "No." "Then what?" The woman's eyes shifted slightly. "Not away. Just checking." Like she was making sure no one else was listening. Then she leaned in, her voice lower. "Your mother came back," she said, after she'd already been gone. Elara's chest tightened. "Why?" Martha hesitated. "Because she thought she could fix something." "What?" "That place," Martha said. "That land." "It wasn't just a piece of dirt, Elara. People think it is now. But it wasn't back then." Elara felt her pulse quicken. "What was it?" Martha straightened slightly, her face hardening just enough to show this wasn't easy to say. "It was part of a deal," she said, "a big one. Before the mine shut down, before everything went bad." "What kind of deal?" Martha's eyes flicked toward the window, then back to Elara. "The kind that makes people rich," she said, "and leaves everyone else with nothing." Elara swallowed. "The Cole family," she said quietly. Martha froze, for just a second. Then, "You've already started digging," she said. Elara reached into her jacket slowly and pulled out the photograph. She slid it across the counter. Martha looked down at it, and everything in her face changed. "Not shocked you found this? There?" she asked. Elara nodded. Martha picked up the photo carefully, like it might break. "That's her," she said softly. "Lena, my mother," Elara said. Martha nodded again. Elara asked. Martha didn't answer immediately, her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the photo. "That's Daniel," she said. The name landed exactly the way Elara expected it to. Final. "Daniel Cole," Martha added, silence the kind that settles deep. Elara felt her heart start to pound again louder now. She knew him, Elara said. Martha looked up at her. She didn't just know him, the words hung there. Then slowly she loved him. Elara's breath caught. Everything inside her shifted at once. Because that changed everything. Then why she started. Because people like him don't get to love people like her. Martha said, cutting her off gently. Not without consequences. Elara shook her head. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to, Martha said, it just has to be true. Elara stared at her, trying to piece it together. My mother worked for them, she said. You said that she did. And something went wrong. Martha's jaw tightened. Something went very wrong. What? Martha hesitated again. Then she leaned closer. Your mother found something she wasn't supposed to find, she said. Numbers that didn't add up. Land that changed hands too easily. People getting pushed out with no explanation. Elara felt a chill run through her. And Daniel, she asked. He tried to stop it. The words hit harder than anything else. Elara's fingers curled against the counter. What happened to him? Martha didn't answer. Not right away. Instead she looked down at the photograph again, then back at Elara. And this time there was no hesitation. They said it was an accident, she said. Elara's chest tightened. But, she pressed. Martha held her gaze. But your mother didn't believe that, she said quietly. Silence fell again. He tried to stop it, and then he died. Elara's mind started to race. And my mother, she asked. Martha's expression softened slightly. She tried to tell the truth, she said. And they made sure no one would listen. Elara felt something sharp twist in her chest. How they said she stole from them, Martha said. Said she made everything up to cover it. That's not true, I know, Martha said. But everyone else believed it? Martha didn't answer. She didn't have to. Elara looked down at the photograph again. At her mother, at Daniel, at the way he had been looking at her. Not like someone who would walk away. Not like someone who would leave. Her throat tightened. She didn't leave me, Elara said quietly. Martha shook her head. No, she said. She didn't. Then why was I? Elara couldn't finish the sentence. Martha's eyes softened. Because once they decided she was the problem, everything connected to her became a problem too. The words landed slow. But they landed hard. Elara sat there, silent, the weight settling in piece by piece. Not abandoned. Removed, not forgotten. She looked up slowly at that hut, she said. There's more. Martha's expression shifted again. What do you mean? There's something hidden there, Elara said. Something they didn't find. Martha went very still. Are you sure? Elara nodded. I think my mother left it for me. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything else. Then Martha spoke, her voice lower than before. If that's true, she said. She leaned in closer. You need to be careful. Elara frowned. Why? Martha didn't look away. Because if they realize you found what they were looking for, she paused. And this time there was no softness in her voice. They won't ask you to sell the land anymore. Elara felt her stomach drop. What will they do? Martha held her gaze. They'll make sure you don't have it. Silence, deep, unavoidable. And in that moment Elara understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't about money, it never had been. And whatever was hidden in that hut was dangerous enough. That someone had already died for it. Elara didn't go back to the hut right away. She stood outside the diner longer than she needed to, the cold air hitting her face, her mind trying to catch up with everything Martha had said. The pieces were starting to connect, but the picture they formed didn't feel stable yet. It felt dangerous. Someone had died. Not just anyone. Daniel Cole, the son of the man who had just stood in front of her and told her to walk away. Elara tightened her grip on the strap of her backpack. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was something people had already tried to bury once, and now it was back. She started walking. Not toward the hut, toward the bank. If she was going to stay here, if she was going to keep digging, she needed to stop thinking like someone who had nothing. She needed a plan, even if it was a small one. The town bank sat on the corner across from the gas station, plain quiet. The kind of place where people knew each other's names before they reached the counter. When Elara stepped inside, a few heads turned. She felt it immediately. The shift. Whispers, even if they weren't spoken out loud. She walked up to the counter anyway. I need to open an account, she said. The man behind the counter hesitated for just a second before nodding. Do you have ID? She handed it over. He looked at it, then looked at her. Quinn, he said. It wasn't just recognition. It was something else. Something heavier, she replied. He didn't ask any more questions. Just moved through the process quietly, efficiently. When it was done, he handed her the papers and gave a small nod. You're all set. Elara took them. Thank you. But as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass behind the counter. He was already looking down at his phone, typing. Her chest tightened. Word was spreading, fast. Outside the sky had cleared slightly, but the air still felt heavy. Elara stepped onto the sidewalk and paused. Across the street a group of men stood near a pickup truck, talking. One of them glanced over at her, then leaned in to say something to the others. They all looked, then looked away, but not before she saw it, not curiosity, judgment. Suspicion. She exhaled slowly and kept walking. By the time she reached the edge of town, the feeling had settled in fully. This place knew her now, and not in a good way. The walk back felt different, quieter. Not because the world had changed, but because she had. Every step felt like she was crossing a line she couldn't come back from. When the hut came into view again, something inside her tightened. At first she thought it was just the same feeling as before, but then she saw it, the door. It was open, not wide, just slightly, but she knew. She had closed it, locked it. Her heart started to pound, slow, heavy. She stopped where she was, just outside the clearing, her body going still. Someone had been here, again, and this time while she was gone. Elara didn't rush forward, didn't call out. She stood there for a few seconds, forcing herself to breathe, to think. Then she moved, slow, careful, every step measured. The wind shifted, brushing through the grass, carrying the faint smell of disturbed dust. She reached the door and placed her hand against it. Cold, still, no movement inside. She pushed it open the rest of the way. The hinges groaned, loud in the silence. Elara stepped in. Everything looked the same at first, the chair, the floor, the walls. But something was off, subtle, but wrong. She moved deeper inside, her eyes scanning everything with a sharper focus now, and then she saw it. The slab. It wasn't fully back in place, just slightly misaligned. Her breath caught. They had found it. Or at least, they had tried to. Elara dropped to her knees and pulled the slab aside. The compartment was still there. The box still inside, untouched. Relief hit her so fast it almost made her dizzy. But it didn't last, because the moment she opened the box she saw it. Something was missing. The documents were still there, the hard drive, the photo. But the envelope, the thick one, was gone. Elara froze. Her hands tightened around the edge of the box. No. No. She had left everything exactly as it was. No one else knew about this. Harrison, her mind raced. Had he come back, or had he sent someone? Either way, they knew. Not everything, but enough. Elara stood quickly, her pulse racing now. Adrenaline pushing through her system. This wasn't just about finding answers anymore. This was about losing them. She turned toward the door and stopped. Because she wasn't alone. A man stood just inside the entrance, not Harrison. Younger, mid-30s maybe, dressed differently. Not polished like the billionaire. But not from town either. He held something in his hand. A folded piece of paper, the envelope. Elara's stomach dropped. "You're late," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. Elara didn't respond, didn't move. Her eyes locked onto the envelope. "That belongs to me," she said. The man tilted his head slightly. "Does it?" "Yes." He studied her for a moment, then let out a small breath. "You're not what I expected. Give it back." He ignored that. Instead he took a step closer. His eyes narrowing just enough to show he wasn't here to negotiate. "You really don't know what you've stepped into, do you?" he said. Elara held her ground. "I know enough." "No," he said. "You don't." He unfolded the paper slightly, just enough for her to see the edge of what was inside. Not blank, not random. Something important, something they didn't want her to have. "Walk away," he said. "Take the money, leave this place behind." Elara shook her head. "No." The word came out stronger this time, clearer. The man's expression hardened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Then make it easy," she said. "Give it back." Silence. Then, a small, but real. The man looked at her differently now. Not like a problem, like a risk. "You sound like him," he said. Elara frowned. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead he folded the paper again, slower this time, more deliberate. And then he said it. "The last person who stood in this room and refused to walk away." He paused. His eyes locked onto hers, didn't make it out. The words hit like ice. Elara felt it, deep, immediate, but she didn't step back, didn't break eye contact. "Then maybe he didn't have a reason strong enough," she said. The man stared at her, quiet, and for a second, just a second, something uncertain flickered in his expression. Then it was gone. "Wrong answer," he said. He turned toward the door. Elara moved forward instinctively. Wait, but he was already stepping outside. And before she could reach him, he was gone. Just like that. The wind moved through the open doorway again, carrying nothing but silence. Elara stood there, her chest rising and falling, her mind racing faster than it ever had before. The envelope was gone, taken, and whoever that man was, he knew about Daniel. He knew what had happened here. And most importantly, he knew she wasn't going to walk away. Elara looked down at the open box, at the things she still had, then back at the empty doorway. Her hands clenched slowly at her sides. Because now, this wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about getting it back. And whoever had just walked out of that door had taken the one piece that might explain everything. Which meant, she was running out of time. Elara didn't chase him. Every instinct told her to run after the man, to grab the envelope back, to stop whatever had just happened from becoming permanent. But something deeper held her in place. Not fear, clarity. She knew that look in his eyes. He hadn't come to argue, he had come prepared. Chasing him now would only make her lose more. So she stood there, breathing hard, forcing her thoughts to slow down, think, not react. That was the only way she stayed in control now. Elara turned back to the box and knelt down again. The remaining documents were still there. The hard drive, the photograph. Whatever had been inside that envelope, it mattered. But it wasn't everything. If it had been everything, they wouldn't have left the rest. Which meant one thing. They thought she didn't understand what she already had. That was their mistake. She picked up the hard drive again, turning it in her hand. This was still sealed, still untouched. Whatever her mother had recorded, it was still here. And maybe it was more important than whatever had just been taken. Elara stood quickly, her mind already moving ahead. She needed a computer, not later now. The sun was already dropping lower by the time she locked the hut again and started walking. The wind had picked up, sharper now, pushing him out against her as if it wanted to slow her down again. But this time she didn't slow. By the time she reached town, the sky had turned orange at the edges. The diner lights were on. A few cars were parked along the street. It looked normal, but it didn't feel normal anymore. Every step she took she felt eyes on her. Not openly but enough to remind her she wasn't just the new girl anymore. She was the problem. Elara didn't stop at the diner. She went straight to the hardware store. The bell rang as she pushed the door open. The man behind the counter looked up. Older, late 60s maybe, weathered hands. Calm eyes, the kind of person who didn't talk unless he had something worth saying. He studied her for a second, then nodded. "You're the one fixing up the Carter place," he said. Elara paused. "Carter?" she asked. "That's what we used to call it," he said, before it got quiet. Something in the way he said it told her he knew more than he was saying. "I need to use a computer," she said. "Just for a little while." The man glanced toward the back office. He said, "Old laptop, it's slow but it works." Relief hit her fast. "Thank you." He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate, just pointed her in the right direction. Elara moved quickly into the back room. The space was small, cluttered. Papers stacked in uneven piles, tools hanging on the wall. In the corner, a worn desk with a laptop sitting on top. She dropped her bag, pulled out the hard drive and connected it. The screen flickered to life, slow, old, but working. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad for a second, then she clicked. The drive opened. 3 files, no labels, no descriptions, just timestamps. Elara swallowed, then opened the first one. The screen went black. For a moment a flicker and a face. Her mother, older than in the photo, tired, but clear, alive. Elara's breath caught. "Hi," the woman said softly. Her voice was steady. But her eyes, they were different. Like she was talking to someone she couldn't see yet. "If you're watching this, it means you found it," she said. Elara felt something break loose inside her chest. Her hands tightened on the edge of the desk. "I don't know how old you are," her mother continued, "or what they told you about me, but I need you to listen carefully." The video shifted slightly, like the camera had been adjusted. "What happened here wasn't an accident," she said. Elara's heart started to pound again. The mine collapse, the land transfers, the money, it was all planned. Her mother's voice stayed calm, measured, like she had gone over these words it's many times before recording them. "They needed that land," she said, "and they couldn't get it legally. So they made it look like no one should want it." Elara leaned forward slightly. They pushed people out. Quietly, one by one, and when that wasn't enough her mother paused. Just for a second, they created a reason. The words settled heavy in the room. Elara's throat tightened. "Daniel found out," her mother said. There it was, the name. "He wasn't supposed to," she continued. "But he did, and he tried to stop it." The video flickered again. For a moment the image blurred, then came back. "They told him to walk away," she said, "to protect the company, the family." Elara's chest rose and fell faster now. But he didn't. Silence, just for a beat. And after that her mother looked away for the first time. Everything changed. Elara felt it. That shift. The one that comes before something you don't want to hear. "They said it was an accident," her mother said quietly. But I saw the reports before they disappeared. I saw what they changed. Elara's fingers pressed into the desk. They didn't kill him directly, her mother said. The words hit strange, confusing. But they made sure he couldn't expose them. A pause. Then, and the worst part? Her mother looked back at the camera. Straight into it. They knew. Elara froze. They knew what was happening, she said. And they chose not to stop it. The weight of that landed differently. Heavier than anything else. Because it wasn't about one person anymore. It was about a decision, a choice. Her mother took a slow breath. If you're watching this, then you're probably asking the same question I did. She leaned closer. Why? Elara felt her throat tighten. And the answer is simple, her mother said. Power. The word sat there, cold, final. They built everything on it, she continued. The company, the reputation, the lie. Elara's vision blurred slightly, and they couldn't afford the truth, her mother said. Silence again. Then her voice softened. But you can. Elara blinked. Her breath uneven now. If you found this, it means you have a choice, her mother said. Walk away. Stay safe. Live your life. A small pause or finish what he started. Elara's heart slammed hard against her chest. Because they won't expect you to. The video flickered again. Then stabilized. There's more, her mother said. Documents, proof. I hid them where they wouldn't look first. Elara's breath caught. The envelope, the screen glitched. The image distorted. Then cut. Black. Elara stared at it, frozen. No. She clicked again. The file ended. She moved to the second one. Nothing. Corrupted. The third. Same. Gone. Elara's hands dropped slowly to her sides. The room felt too small now. Too quiet. They took it. The words barely left her lips. The envelope. The missing piece. That's where it was. That's what she had been about to hear. And now, someone else had it. Elara leaned back slightly, her mind racing faster than it ever had before. They didn't kill him directly. But they made sure he couldn't expose them. They knew. They chose not to stop it. Her chest tightened. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about the man who died. It was about the man who let it happen. Her hands curled slowly into fists. Because there was only one person that could be. Only one person with that kind of power, that kind of control, that kind of choice. Harrison Cole, the billionaire. The father. The man who had stood in front of her and told her to walk away. Elara looked back at the black screen. Her reflection stared back. Different now. Not confused, not lost. Clear, because now she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't just about exposing a company. This was about confronting a man who had already made his choice. And if she didn't stop it, he would make it again. The door behind her creaked slightly. Elara turned. The old man from the shop stood there, watching her. His expression unreadable. You found something, he said quietly. Elara didn't answer right away. Then, yes. He nodded slowly. Then you should know. He stepped into the room. There's a meeting tomorrow. Elara frowned. What kind of meeting? Town council, he said. Cole's people are pushing the project through. Her stomach dropped. How soon? Soon enough that no one can stop it. Silence. Then he looked at her directly. Unless someone gives them a reason to. Elara's pulse picked up again. Fast, sharp, because now she knew. This wasn't just about finding the truth anymore. It was about timing, and she had just lost the one piece that could prove everything. Which meant, if she didn't act now, the truth would be buried again. This time, for good. Elara didn't leave the shop right away. She stood there for a few seconds after the old man spoke, letting the weight of it settle. A meeting. Tomorrow. Not weeks. Not months. Tomorrow. That wasn't a coincidence. That was timing. Planned, rushed. Like they were trying to finish something before anyone could stop it. She looked at the black laptop screen again. Her mother's face was gone now, replaced by her own reflection. But the words stayed. They won't expect you to. Elara closed the laptop slowly and unplugged the drive. Her hands were steady now. Not calm, but focused. How many people show up to those meetings, she asked. The old man leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely. Depends, he said. When it's something small, a few. When it's something like this, most of the town won't. He nodded. Council makes the final call. But they listen to the room. Always have. Elara let that sink in. So it wasn't just about proof. It was about people, what they believed, what they were willing to ignore. Do they know? She asked. The man didn't need clarification. Some suspect, he said. Why? He gave a small tired smile. Because it's easier, he said. Jobs, money, promises. Those things feel real. Truth doesn't always. Elara looked down at the hard drive in her hand. Truth didn't always feel real, not until it was too late. She nodded once. Thank you, she said. He didn't respond right away. Just watched her. Be careful who you trust. Elara met his eyes. Does that include you? The man let out a short breath. Especially me, he said. That was honest. More honest than anything else she had heard that day. Elara picked up her bag and walked out. The air outside had cooled quickly. The town looked the same. Lights on. People moving. Conversations happening like nothing was about to change. But under it, something was shifting. She could feel it. Like a storm building before anyone saw the clouds. Elara didn't go back to the hut. Not yet. Instead, she walked to the edge of town and sat on a low wooden bench facing the open land. The sky had gone dark blue, the last light fading behind the hills. She pulled the photograph out again. Her mother, Daniel. The way he had looked at her. Like she mattered. Elara stared at it for a long time. They said you died in an accident, she whispered under her breath. No answer, just wind. But you didn't walk away. That part mattered. That part stayed. Because it meant something. It meant he had known the risk. And chosen it anyway. Elara closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. The decision came quiet. But clear. She wasn't walking away either. By the time she got up, the town had grown quieter. Fewer people on the street. Lights dimming one by one, but a few places stayed open. The diner, the bar, and one building at the far end of the road. Elara stared at it for a second, then started walking. If the envelope was gone, then she needed something else, something official. Something they couldn't just take and disappear. The building was locked, but not secured. Small towns didn't think like cities. They didn't expect someone to break in. Not really. Elara moved around the side, found a window slightly cracked open, and slid it the rest of the way up. She paused. Listened. Nothing. Then she climbed in. The air inside smelled the same as before. Paper, dust, old wood, familiar. She moved quickly, keeping her steps light. The hallway stretched ahead, dim but not completely dark. A single light glowed in one of the offices. Mr. Halvorson's. Elara hesitated, then stepped closer. The door was open. He was inside. Sitting at his desk, reading something. He didn't look surprised when he saw her. Figured you'd come back, he said. Elara didn't apologize, didn't explain. I need access to the records, she said. He leaned back slightly. After hours, yes. That's not how this works. Elara stepped inside. They're pushing something through tomorrow, she said. You know that. He didn't answer. They're trying to bury it again, she continued. And I think you know that too. Mr. Halvorson studied her, long, carefully. You're making a lot of assumptions, he said. I'm making connections, she replied. Silence. Then he stood slowly, walked around the desk, stopped in front of her. You remind me of someone, he said. Elara didn't. My mother? He shook his head. No. A pause. Someone who didn't know when to stop. The words weren't harsh, just honest. Lara didn't back down. She asked. His eyes shifted. What? Did it matter that he didn't stop? She pressed. Did it change anything? Mr. Halvorson looked away for the first time. Just for a second, then back. Yes, he said quietly. How? He made them afraid. The answer landed heavier than she expected. Afraid of what? She a truth, he said. Elara held his gaze. Then help me do the same. Silence filled the room again. Longer this time. Deeper. Mr. Halvorson exhaled slowly, then turned. Walked to a cabinet behind his desk. Unlocked it. Pulled out a thick folder. These are copies, he said. Not everything, but enough. Elara stepped closer, opened it. Inside maps, ownership records, transfer logs, names, dates, patterns. Her pulse quickened. This is proof of how the land changed hands, he said. Before and after the collapse. Elara flipped through the pages. The same name appeared again and again. Cole. This ties them to it. She said. That's enough. Is it? He asked. Elara stopped, looked at him. No, she admitted. But it's something they can't ignore. He nodded once. Then you better make sure they're listening. Elara gathered the papers quickly. Stuffed them into her bag. Thank you, she said. Mr. Halvorson didn't respond right away. Then, be careful tomorrow, he said. She paused at the door. Why? His voice dropped slightly. Because they already know you're not going away. Elara's grip tightened on the strap of her bag. Good, she said. And she left outside. The night had fully settled. The town looked quiet again, still, but it wasn't. Not anymore. Elara walked back toward the edge town, her steps steady, her mind clear. Because now she had something, not everything, but enough to start, enough to stand, enough to speak. And tomorrow, she was going to make sure they heard it. Even if it meant standing alone in that room. Even if it meant facing the man who had already chosen power over truth. Elara didn't slow down, didn't look back. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to survive the next day. She was walking straight into it. And this time, she was ready to fight. But as she reached the road leading back to the hut, she stopped. Because across the street, parked in the shadows, was the same black SUV. Engine off, lights out. Waiting, and inside, someone was watching her. The room was already full by the time Ilara walked in. Voices overlapped. Chairs scraped against the floor. People leaned toward each other, whispering things they didn't want said out loud. Some glanced at her the moment she stepped through the door. Others didn't bother to hide it. She felt it immediately. The weight of being watched, judged, measured. But she didn't stop. She walked to the front, the folder in her hands. Her step steady even when her chest wasn't. At the far side of the room, the counsel sat behind a long table, papers, microphones. A process that looked official enough to feel safe. And beside them Harrison Cole. He didn't look surprised to see her. He didn't look anything at all, just calm, controlled. Like everything was already decided. The man from the hut stood behind him, the same one who had taken the envelope. Their eyes met for a brief second. No words. Just an understanding. Ilara stopped a few feet from the table. "I need to speak," she said. The room quieted slightly. Not fully, but enough. One of the council members leaned forward. "You'll have your turn," he said. "We're reviewing, it can't wait," she said. Her voice didn't rise. But it cut through the noise anyway. Because it didn't carry anger, it carried something else, certainty. The man hesitated, then nodded once. "Go ahead." Ilara stepped forward. She didn't look at Harrison, not yet. She looked at the room. At the people. At the ones who would have to live with whatever happened next. "This land," she said, holding up the folder, "was taken from people who didn't have the power to fight back." A murmur moved through the crowd. She kept going. "The records show it. Ownership transfers that don't make sense. Property sold under pressure. Families pushed out quietly so no one would notice." Someone in the back shifted. Another voice spoke under their breath, but no one stopped her. "Years ago someone tried to expose it," she said. "He didn't succeed." Now she looked at Harrison. Just for a second. Because he didn't have enough people willing to listen. Silence. Real silence this time. Ilara opened the folder and laid the documents out across the table. "These are copies," she said. "They're not perfect. But they show a pattern, and patterns don't lie." One of the council members reached forward, flipping through the pages slowly. "You're making serious claims," he said. "I know," Ilara replied. "Do you have proof of intent?" The question hung in the air. That was the missing piece, the envelope. The thing she didn't have anymore. Ilara felt it. That moment where everything could slip. Where truth could disappear again, just because it wasn't complete enough. She took a breath, then said it anyway. "I have enough to ask you one question," she said. The council member frowned slightly. "What question?" Ilara didn't look at him, she looked at Harrison. Why was this land so important that someone had to die for it? The room shifted, not loud. But deep. Harrison didn't respond right away. He sat there, hands folded, eyes steady. Then slowly he stood. Every sound in the room faded. "Because this wasn't part of the process, this wasn't supposed to happen." "I'll answer that," he said. His voice was calm, but different now. Not controlled for appearance. Controlled because it had to be. "This project," he continued, "was built on decisions made a long time ago." He stepped forward slightly. Decisions that prioritized growth, expansion, stability. The words sounded familiar, corporate, distant. But then he paused, and something in his posture shifted, subtle, but real. And those decisions came at a cost. The room went still. Ilara didn't move, didn't breathe. Harrison's gaze moved across the crowd, then back to her. "My son believed that cost was too high," he said. The words landed heavy. Not dramatic, just honest. "He tried to stop it," Harrison continued, "and in doing so he put himself in a position where he could no longer protect himself." A quiet ripple moved through the room. "He wasn't killed," Harrison said. Then he took a breath. "But he wasn't protected either." That was it. That was the truth. Not clean. Not simple. "I knew," he added. The words came softer, almost like they didn't belong in a room like this. "I knew what was happening around him. And I chose not to act." No one spoke. No one moved. Because that was the moment everything changed. Not when Ilara spoke. Not when the documents were shown. But when the man with the power admitted it. "I chose the company," Harrison said quietly. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything people didn't want to face. And I have lived with that choice every day since. He looked at Ilara then. Really looked at her. Not like a problem. Not like a threat. But like something he had lost before he even understood it. "The project will not move forward," he said. One of the council members straightened. "Mr. Cole, we need to." "No," Harrison said. "Firmal. We don't." Another pause. "Then, the land will be returned where possible," he added. "And compensation will be offered where it cannot." The room erupted. Voices, questions, shock. But Ilara didn't hear most of it. She stood there watching him, waiting for something else, for something personal, for something that wasn't about business. Harrison held her gaze for a second longer. Then I can't undo what I didn't stop, he said quietly. It wasn't loud, most people didn't even hear it, but she did, and I won't ask you to forgive it. That was all, no apology, no excuse, just truth. And for the first time it was enough, not to fix everything, but to stop it from continuing. Weeks later the land looked different. Not because it had changed physically, but because people saw it differently now. Some families came back, others didn't. Some took the compensation, others chose to stay. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean, but it was honest, and that mattered. The hut stood the same as before. Rust still on the walls, wind still moving through the cracks. But inside, it wasn't empty anymore. Ilara had cleaned it, slowly, piece by piece, not trying to rebuild everything at once, just enough to make it livable. A place to stay, a place to breathe, a place to begin again. She didn't take the money Harrison offered later. Not the large amount, not the easy way out. She kept just enough to fix what needed fixing, nothing more. Because this place, it wasn't about money, it never had been, it was about what it gave her. A starting point, a choice. One afternoon as the light filtered through the patched roof, Ilara stood by the doorway looking out across the land. It was quiet, simple, real. Behind her, a small table held the photograph. Her mother. And in front of her something else. Not finished. Not perfect. But hers. A knock came at the door. Uncertain, Ilara turned. A young girl stood there, maybe 16, a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Her eyes moved quickly, like she wasn't sure she should be here. I heard, the girl said quietly, that you help people. Ilara looked at her for a long moment, saw the hesitation, the fear. The same one she used to carry. Then she stepped aside. Come in, she said. The girl hesitated, then took a step forward. And just like that something changed. Not in a loud way, not in a dramatic way, but in a real one. Because the hut that had once hidden the truth was now a place where people could start over. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. If this story meant something to you, take a moment to share your thoughts. And if you've ever had to start over with nothing, maybe this is your reminder that where you begin doesn't define where you end.